In the last section, we learned that we could reference a JavaScript variable or a function inside of a block of JSX by putting down a set of curly braces like so. Again, I want to remind you, this is not a JavaScript object. It is the syntax that JSX uses to refer to some JavaScript variable. Now, in this video, I want to tell you a little bit more about what different types of variables we can reference inside of JSX, specifically when we're trying to put something in here that's going to display on our screen as text or some otherwise value. I'm going to first begin by deleting that function that we just put together. We don't really need that anymore, and it's just going to make this example a little more complicated than it needs to be. I'm then going to go back to putting that variable inside the app component we had before. So I'll say const button text is click me like so. And then inside of our curly braces right here, I'll again replace it with button text. And now that we don't have a function, we do not need a set of parentheses. So it's just button text like so. All right, very quickly, I'm going to save this file and just make sure that everything is still working. Yep, looks good. All right. So if we want to, we can reference other types of variables rather than a string here. For example, I could instead replace this with a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can then save this, flip back over, and I'll see that number printed up here. I could also replace this with an array of, say, strings or numbers. I could do something like hi there. 2 strings inside of an array. If I then save that and flip back over, you'll see the 2 strings got pushed together, or essentially concatenated inside that button. And if I want to, I could also replace it with a set of numbers like 10 and 20. I can then save this again, and I'll see 10, 20 over here. So we clearly have a pretty good amount of flexibility here. But there's one particular example of something that I want to show you right here, the entire point of this video, because I can almost guarantee that you're going to run into this bug at some point in time. And when you see the error message around this bug, it's going to be pretty darn confusing. So I'm going to replace button text right here with a JavaScript object instead. This is a plain object. I'm going to give it a property of, say, text, and I'll say click me. All right, so now I'm going to save the file again. When I flip back over, we're going to see a nasty error message appear. Now I want you to really look at this error message and try to remember it, because like I said, I can almost guarantee you're going to see this at some point in time in your React career. The error message says, objects are not valid as a React child. A React child essentially means we are trying to show an object, like a JavaScript object, inside of a React component as text. And React does not know how to deal with that. So we are not allowed to take a JavaScript object and reference it inside of JSX, specifically where we would normally show text. We could very easily fix this by putting on button text.text. So now that's going to refer to the text property of this object. We can save this, and we'll see that we're back to working as we were before. Now, the reason that I put a lot of emphasis on that last part saying we can't show an object as text is because technically we can show a JavaScript object as an attribute on an element like this right here. Now that you understand the purpose of this curly brace syntax, we can look back at the style property and get a better idea of what's going on. So what we're really doing here is we're saying we want to reference a JavaScript variable for this style property. And the value that we're going to pass in is this JavaScript object. If we wanted to, we could technically cut that thing out, create a new variable up here called style, assign the style object to it, and then reference that style down here like so. And that would have the exact same effect. So clearly we can use JavaScript objects as long as we're not trying to print them up as text or something like that inside of our application. Okay. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to undo that last little change and leave it like so. Now, the very last thing I want to mention very quickly is that if we want to, we can do multiple interpolations inside of a JSX block. So for example, we could extract this to say label text equals enter name, and then reference that inside of our label instead. Like so. We can save this, flip back over to our browser, and we'll see that we still have enter name for the label as well. Okay, so that's just a couple of the big important things for you to understand around the differences between HTML and JSX. If you look at the diagram over here, I made it seem like there is only 3 issues, but there is one last little thing that I want to show you. One little thing that you need to be aware of in the differences between JSX and HTML. So quick pause and I'll see you in just a minute.